I got my focus on passion and empathy. Gaining perspectives, investing, I do believe. Money and grinding go hand in hand, you will see. I'm working smart, expending my energy. Hope that you feeling me, I'm acting differently. You got a friend in me. I'm working hard to try and work smart. No time to complain, it's time to start. We gotta work. Future millionaires.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Future Millionaires. Today we have on Joe Staiber, who is not your typical 20-year-old. He is working smart and working hard to grow his business, which is Staiber Consulting. So without further ado, Joe, how you doing today, brother?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So can you jump in and give us a 60-second snippet of really where you're at right now in your life and, what you're up to in your business as well?
Yeah. I think, the quickest way to break it down would be, I'm traveling a lot and speaking at a lot of the different events, speaking about how I went from 2 six-figure e-commerce stores to training students and then transitioning over to a marketing agency, which is what I spend most of my time doing now. I run a fully operational marketing agency. We scale advertisements and do brand consulting for a lot of different businesses in the e-commerce space and outside of the e-commerce space.
Love that. So we'll definitely dive into that as the podcast goes on. But to give our listeners a little bit more background on you, what you're all about, can you give us a little bit about your early childhood insights and, what it was like for you growing up and when entrepreneurship was introduced into your life?
Yeah, for sure. So I wasn't wealthy by any means, but I also didn't grow up poor. I was very middle class, so I grew up great. I had a fantastic childhood. My parents did get divorced around 7 or 8 years old. I was the oldest sibling, so I was there for my brother and sister a lot. And I was constantly going back between my mom's and my dad's, and we were constantly doing stuff with friends and stuff. So right around I would say 9 or 10 years old, I got into that I need money kind of mindset. I remember the first time I needed money was when my mom first started letting me walk a couple neighborhoods down to go to the local Wawa. Which is a convenience store on the East Coast. And me and my buddies would want to go, but she would tell me that if I wanted to spend money, I had to use my own. So I would do chores around the house, clean the attic, clean my room, get $5 here and there. And that was my first insight into it. I was collecting Pokemon cards and baseball cards my whole life. So I started selling and flipping those at a very young age, right around that same time. I guess it transitioned into mowing lawns and shoveling driveways. And at the time I never knew that was an entrepreneurial thing to do. It just kind of was naturally to me. I wanted to make money. I was too young to work a 9-to-5 job. I would go to the beach every single summer for the summer. And I remember that I used to walk to a restaurant every day and I would ask them if they could give me work to do. And I was too young to be employed, but what they would do is they would give me $10. They would hand me a stack of menus and they would tell me to walk around the beach and hand the menus out to people. So I was doing every little weird thing you could think about to pull in some extra income before I was even 12 or 13 years old. And then I guess kind of what happened is to say the least, as I continued to grow up, that side of me, went down the wrong path. I started doing some things that I shouldn't have been doing for money. I was selling drugs. I shouldn't say selling drugs. I was selling weed. But I made money in high school doing that, and good money for that matter. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun in high school, bro. I was like a college kid in high school. I was going balls to the wall crazy. And I was not a good kid by any means, definitely was going down the wrong path. And thank God I actually experienced that at a young age, because right around senior year, I went through a really bad breakup, and it continued all the way through my first semester of college. I was miserable at school, not just from the breakup, because I didn't really like the environment. Everybody was partying all day, every day, except it was the same 30 faces in the same house. And none of these people were going anywhere with their lives. And for me, it was I don't know if many people can resonate with this, but for me, I was I'm over this. I did all of this for 4 years straight in high school. I'm done with this college scene. I expected college to be so much more. And I do think that half of it was because I went to a smaller state school. I didn't go to a massive, a D1, Penn State or something. But at the end of the day, I was I'm over this, bro. I've partied for 4 years. This is the same stuff that what you guys are calling fun is what I call a normal Saturday night. And I was I'm going to just start focusing on myself. And not to mention, I just didn't fit in very well. It wasn't my environment. So when most people would be out on Friday and Saturday, at parties, I was locked in my room and I was flipping stuff off Craigslist. And, just making money through retail arbitrage. And at the same time, while I was in school, the only reason that I actually stayed so long was because I got, I made the team for D2 ice hockey. So I was playing ice hockey 5 days a week. So not only did I not have any time for a job, But I also couldn't go out to most of the parties because we had this 24-hour rule, which meant you couldn't go to a party 24 hours before a game, or you couldn't drink or smoke 24 hours before a game. And it just became like a normal thing for me not to go out on Fridays and Saturdays because we always had a game on Saturday morning. And sometimes on Sunday. So through that environment, I kind of was forced into like being my own person and doing my own thing. And I just kind of got introduced to the whole entrepreneurship space. I was making money from Craigslist and whatnot. And I came across, I just like every college kid, I searched on Google, how do I make money online? And came across drop shipping, started getting targeting with ads, didn't understand how it worked, but I was like, I keep seeing these ads, what the hell's going on? And I paid for a few courses, lost a ton of money buying really bullshit courses from a lot of people that just were not, they didn't know what they were talking about. And, taught myself through trial and error, spent thousands on ads, lost most of it. And, I was pretty much getting to a point where the well was almost dry. So I kept flipping, products off Craigslist. And finally, I finally had my first profitable product. And by the end of my first semester of college, which was like end of December, which was like during Q4, which makes sense, I had hit my first 50K in sales. And I didn't make 50K, I profited like 23% of that, but still did pretty well for, a kid in college that was working out of a dorm room. And I showed my parents, I just said, look, I'm miserable. I don't want to drop out, but I want to take a semester off and put my all into this thing and see if I want to change schools. And on top of that, see if I can, turn this into a fully operational business. That 50K turned into 100K. And at which point I decided I'm going to take a second semester off, still haven't decided fully to drop out and travel the country. And I went to every national park in the US, built a brand called Mountaineer Gear, which was a camping brand, and took that to an ungodly amount of profit and sold it off. And at that point in time, I was like, okay, I'm dropping out. So I dropped out of school and I started a second e-commerce business, and I was selling AirPods. So back when that whole AirPods trend happened, like in 2017, 2018, I was all over that. Made really quick money, good money off of that, took it to 6 figures, sold it off. And at that point in time, my family owned a record label. And I was like, Dad, let me try to use these marketing strategies for physical products to try and generate clients for the business. He let me try it out. It worked really well. And long story short is I realized that I had potential to work with other businesses, not just my own, and started charging money to run ads and basically do the marketing campaigns for businesses. And long story short, that turned into not only just ads, but brand consulting, and like building at the back end and the funnels and, the website design. And next thing you know, I had a fully operational agency, and 8 months later, here we are at a 6-figure business. And it's just a super cool story. And it kind of all happened like within the last, 2 or 3 years. So I'm kind of just taking it one day at a time and seeing where it takes me.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And we're definitely going to dissect that and dive into a lot of things you just touched on there. And one of them I'd like to start out on is, a lot of our listeners are in the high school, college age range. So some of them may not be able to relate to the college aspect yet. Some of them will. And me personally, right, this is my first semester in college, and I know exactly what you're talking about, right? Actually, like with the whole leveling down thing, I just would like you to touch on how you're setting up your environment now to really avoid that type of situation where you're surrounded by people who are almost like leveling down when they should be leveling up. Yeah,
and it's so cliche, and people will be like, this guy is just a motivational bullshit. You know what I mean? Like it's not like that. Like I don't know what it was about me, and I feel like it's very cocky of me to say, but I don't mean it in a cocky stance in any way, shape, or form. I just felt like nobody was on my level. Like I felt like everybody had the wrong mindset. They were just focused on what they were doing that Friday night, how much alcohol they were going to drink, who they were going to try and hook up with. And I was just like, I am so over this. Like it's like your life shouldn't revolve around that. You should be able to go out and have a good time. That stuff just kind of happens. Like it shouldn't be like talking about it all day, making plans. Like, oh, we want to do, let's go smoke. Like that's just what everybody was doing. And like, I'm just like, we are like fully grown adults paying $150,000 to go to this school. And like, if I don't get a job after this, like I'm severely fucked. And like, I was like, I guess the best way to put it, bro, is like my biggest fear in life is being average. I know that sounds weird, but like my biggest fear in life is literally just being average. So I'd rather fail than be average. And what happened was and at the time it was a limiting belief. Like you don't know what's out there because that's all you're surrounded with your entire life. But what happened was I started following some really successful entrepreneurs on social media. And I ended up going out to this event out in Arizona called the Build Your Empire event. It was the first event I ever attended. And long story short, best way to put it was I was 18 years old and there was a 16-year-old driving a damn GTR that he paid for cash. And like these other kids that had, like one had a Lambo, one had a Rolls Royce. Like I was just like, what is happening? These kids are younger than me. Like how do they afford these cars? And I realized that they were making a ton of money off of social media and, Facebook marketing and like these platforms that I already know so well. And I was like, I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. But 3 days later after the event, I was like so invested into it. I'm like, now that I see this is possible, again, it comes back to limiting beliefs. You don't know what's out there. Once I saw what was possible, that there was kids younger than me making an ungodly amount of money, living in an amazing house, like already moved out, like not going to college, I was like, what the heck is going on? I'm doing shit wrong. And I went home, bro, and I literally locked myself in a bedroom. I didn't come out until 6 months later when I was speaking on stage with the same kid that hosted that event that I went to. Within 6 months, I was speaking on the same stage that he was speaking on with me. And I had flown out a couple months before just to go see him speak. So just a very cool transition. And the number one thing for me, bro, is at the time, I didn't know. It was all I knew. I was depressed because I thought that was life. And once I found out that there was people out there doing these massive things, making an unbelievable amount of money, and I felt like I fit in for once in my life. Like I felt like all of these guys that I chilled with, they were so similar and alike to me, and like the way they thought and acted and like their demeanors and the way they hung out, and we could go have a good time. I guess like to drink and have a good time, and we could go have a good time without it being like just a complete frat. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah.
It's hard. It's kind of hard to explain, but like that switch happened because once I saw what was possible, I was like, I'm never going back to hanging out with people like that again, because all they do is drag me down. And like I needed that kind of switch and that kind of motivation to visually see that visual representation of what was possible. And once I saw that, it was game over.
Yeah. So this is super interesting to me, because you basically went from, hanging out in a college environment to going to one event. And then it sounds like the next event you attended, or maybe not the next one, but you were speaking, within 6 months. So how did you go from attending an event where you didn't know anyone when you initially got there to actually being asked to speak at an event where this?
It's all about your environment. It's so much about your environment. Like, I mean, like I said, I had taken a store to 50K in sales, and I had taken a store to 100K, and I was doing pretty well. So like I understood e-commerce, and I was going to an event where half of the people were speaking about e-commerce. Like the one kid owns a Lamborghini, pulled up in a Lambo because he's made it from e-commerce, and he was speaking. And I was like, okay, well, like I'm making money with e-commerce, but I ain't making money like this. And what I did was I went home and I continued to hone in on my skills. So most people that attend an event would never be able to do that because they're on the level of an attendee. And like, again, not to be cocky, but like I was getting results. I did have some success with e-commerce. And now I was building, like the people that I went out there and chilled with, I'm not going to say they were my friends at that point, but like we definitely got along and like made like that first foundation of a connection. And a lot of those relationships have continued to grow ever since then. And like I set that foundation. So I built those relationships up, and I had pictures with these guys on my socials, which helps my brand, which helps my credibility moving forward. And what happened was, it was actually a pretty cool story. So one of my students, we had e-commerce students. I've taught over 250 different students. We have over 7 figures in student sales rev. Like our students have gotten some really great results. And one of the students that I had worked with was actually asked to speak at an event called NetCon out in New York City, which was April 14th, I believe, of 2019. And it was either April 14th or April 9th, I can't remember. But I saw that one of my students was speaking, and not like a jealousy kind of thing, but I was like, well, if he's speaking, like, I'm going to see if I can speak. Like, so I reached out to the person running the event, and I was like, hey, like this, person X is one of my students. I'd love to, come talk about my strategies, maybe even do a panel with him about how we were able to get him to where he is, or whatever you think is best. And because I had that first foot in the door, it worked out pretty well. And he didn't give me a yes right away. But then one of my other good buddies, Phil, he's a fitness trainer. He got asked to speak. And I asked Phil, I said, Phil, can you put in a good word for me? And Phil was like, hey, did you get Staiber to speak? And Simon called me back and was like, hey, this is the second person now telling me that they want you to speak. Like, what's good? And I was like, dude, like, I promise you, if you put me on stage, I will be the best presentation of the entire day. And I put together a fire presentation on like a Facebook ads testing and scaling strategy. And like I have went to multiple events, and every event I went to is all motivational. And I was like, I'm not coming and giving people motivation. I'm coming and giving direct value that they can literally implement the second they go home. And every single person that came up to me after the event was like, you were my favorite speaker of the day. Everybody else was providing motivation. You gave me real tangible value that I actually can go home and implement, like blah, 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 blah. And then Simon contacted me and was like, hey, I've had a ton of feedback saying that you were my favorite speaker. And long story short, we've had, I think, 4 or 5 NetCon events now, and I've spoken at every single one because like, it's just, I've been built as part of the community now. And I love that. I love that entire environment. And then because of NetCon having 2 or 3 events with them, I was getting content of me speaking. And some of the people that actually host events come to NetCon. So I've had people from NetCon events that attended ask me to come speak at their event. It kind of just snowballed from there on out. And it's all because of the environment that I placed myself in and the connections that I made that allowed me to do that.
Yeah, totally. So I got two main points I want to touch on there, because one of them is with your network and how you're able to connect with these guys. How did you approach that? Because I know some people like they go about the wrong way. They might kind of go from like a fanboy approach or whatever it is. How did you build like a genuine connection with a lot of these?
So I'm not gonna lie, I would like to actually talk to them once I see them again and ask them what they thought of me the first time they met me. But like I feel like I did kind of come across as like not a fanboy, but like obviously like I definitely was like a little bit starstruck because I've been following these guys for a long time and like saw what was possible. But the number one thing that was different for me was I was extremely nervous when I first went out there. But within 45 minutes, I was chill. Like my first night, I met up with this girl named Melissa, who is amazing at Amazon FBA. She's an absolute beast. And we were going to go do a photo shoot together because we both hired the same, photographer for that weekend. I hired him to follow me around all weekend. We went out and got some photographs, and we kind of hit it off. Like we had a very similar mentality and personality. And we ended up going out to dinner with, a bunch of different people, Sebastian, like a bunch of different people in the e-commerce community that are doing really big things. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to dinner with these guys. Like they don't even really know who I am, but I'm already fitting in. Like we're very similar. And like, again, it comes back to that limiting belief. Like I saw right away that there was nothing that separated them from me. Like they might have a little bit more money, but like we are the same. We are both human beings. We're both in the same space. He's just a couple steps ahead. And like, I never looked at it as like, he's better than, like, all I saw was I'm just a couple steps behind and I just need to catch up a little bit. So from the very beginning, I looked at it as, we're on the same playing field. So I didn't treat him as like the number one thing that you could do to fuck yourself up is like try and take a picture with somebody or like ask them questions right off the bat. Like nobody wants to help you when you just walk up and like, hey, what can I do to, increase my conversion rate on my store? Like that immediately places you as lower. Like I was chilling with him, talking to him about like his car, his life, some of the other guys, that were there, like we were laughing about like one of us faked we had a birthday and like we got like a free dessert. Like we were having a good time. It was like normal everyday friendship life. Like we weren't acting like it was business. And I think because I acted that way, I was able to kind of gel with the group a little bit more. And then, bro, it comes down to like skill set, right? Like most people get in an environment like that and they don't have any value to provide. I was doing really well with e-commerce. I had a lot of knowledge about it. I was going to be successful. And I feel like at least I know, like at this point in time with where I'm at, I can tell when I'm speaking with somebody whether or not they're either going to be successful or not, or whether or not they are successful or not. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, I feel like they had that same, what's that receptor in their brain. They were like, yeah, this kid knows what he's talking about. Like I have no problem, hanging out with him and building a relationship. And I don't know if that's the way it happened. This is kind of all in my mind, but like, if I had to guess, it was because I didn't place them on a pedestal. I didn't act like they were better than me. I just acted like I was one of them, and soon enough became one of them.
Totally. So now if you're talking to somebody who, is very interested in entrepreneurship, but they don't have a valuable skill yet, would you recommend that they go and build out that valuable skill? Yep. Or would you say that they go to an event really to get the motivation kind of like you did, and then like use that to then,
well, I think both of them are extremely important. It shouldn't be one or the other. You should do both. Obviously, you should go to an event to learn the skill sets that we're teaching, because you're not going to learn it in college. And most of the time, any YouTube course that you watch is going to be funneling you into a course to pay for, which is fine. I'm not against, I have a course, I have a program. My students do amazing in it. They love it. I've bought in courses and gotten crazy results. Like some of the stuff that I learned with some courses, you just have to be careful about who you buy it from. Because if you remember when I was talking about my background, the first few courses I bought were just a complete scam. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons I got into the space, was to like make a trustworthy product that people can believe in and, interact with. But I think it comes down to, you should go to an event. You should surround yourself with those types of people, because when you have friends in that environment that push you to be better and you see what's possible, that level of motivation isn't even motivation anymore. It becomes like daily life. It's like, I'm not going to allow myself to live a life that I'm living now when I know what's possible. Yes. And then the second half of things is also like nobody, like, and I don't mean this in a cocky way, I keep saying that, but like, you can't walk up to somebody and like expect them to give you the time of day, give you value, hang out with you, if you're not bringing anything to the table for them. Like you will meet people in your life where like a relationship is all you need. Like you might have something in common, like you both play the same sport and you hit it off. But like when it comes to like building really professional, high powered relationships, like those types of people hang out with other high level people. And if you just show up without a skill set, without knowledge, without that level of success, the problem is like people are gonna think that you either just don't fit. You're gonna like be an outcast. Like I don't mean that in a bad way, but like you really shouldn't try to surround yourself with people until like you already are doing things. Like for example, like me and John Danes, if you know him, are like a perfect example. He's one of my best friends. Like we started out together at the same exact time. He was building his podcast. I was building my business in the e-commerce business. We both went to the Build Your Empire event. We both spoke together at the first one that we both spoke at was together at NetCon. Like we have been leveling up from day one. And like, that's what you need to do. Like a group 5 person isn't going to hang out with a group 1 person. And like, you have to figure out who's your group 1, and then you're going to level up. Like some people in your group 1 will move with you to group 2, group 3, group 4. Some of them will be a little bit behind you, but like find your core group of people that need to build themselves up. And then as a team, work together. I wouldn't say like, as a bit like inside of a business, but like be friends, like help each other grow. And then you'll see each other level up. And then as you level up, you'll each share connections. And then those connections will tie you to somebody that's in a level 3 when you're in a level 2. And then you'll move up. And it's kind of all of an analogy that I'm getting at. But like the point is like, there's different levels to society, and like you're going to level up as you continue to be more and more successful. So figure out who's in your environment, who's worth communicating with, and then level up with those people, build those relationships out, and then they will connect to other people as well. Like the worst thing that you can do is try to connect when you're level 1, try to connect with a level 10. Like it's not going to work out. And then when you are on a level 10 and that person is on a level 15, they're not going to want to speak with you anymore because they already have like a weird vibe about you because of that first time you had that interaction. Where if you had just waited, now they're going to see that you're doing big things. You might be a few steps behind them, but you are doing big things. And hey, we should probably get connected because this person's going to be where I'm at in a couple months. Right. And like that's the mindset behind it. I'm kind of like going off on a tangent, but that's definitely the best way to go about it.
No, it's a good tangent, brother. I enjoyed it. And so what would you say? Would you say that surrounding yourself with the correct environment is the most effective and is the best way to level up? Or is there something specific you did? Like for me, one thing I do every day is I try to get uncomfortable and make myself 1% better every day at getting used to being uncomfortable, getting comfortable with that. So like, what are some of the things that you do?
Obviously, like you said, improve 1% every day is important to me. I feel like, I've gotten to a point now where if I don't work, if I don't do something, I get mad at myself. I feel like I'm wasting time. So like it's kind of progressed that way. I think that, you hit the nail on the head. It's definitely your environment 1000%. Because if you're surrounded by a bad environment, it's just going to drag you down. And it all comes back to limiting beliefs. That's the number one thing. When you're surrounding yourself with people that aren't doing big things, they will do whatever they can to make you feel like you can't either, because they're stuck in a box and they want you to be stuck in that same box with them. And it's gonna drag you down. It's gonna hold you back. It's gonna make you not want to, show off and do what you're doing. Like I've been posting my successes for a couple months now, and I get people hitting me up all the time. Like you're a scam. Like you're never gonna be successful, bro. Like you're robbing all these people. I'm like, you know what, man? Like if that's your limiting belief, and that's what makes you content with your 9-to-5 job at $10 an hour. If that's what helps you sleep at night, that's fine. But like, here's a pay stub for you to see how much money we're actually pulling in. Like, and I think it comes back to like when somebody else can't be successful, they don't want you to be successful either. So that's definitely the one half of it. The second half of it is you have to self-educate. Like you have to. If you're not spending at least 1 to 2 hours a day watching keynote speeches from billionaires and millionaires and, marketing experts and, investing into courses and mentors, like here's my outlook on it. And no disrespect because I know you're in college, but like when you're in college and you're studying business or entrepreneurship and you ask your college professor if they've ever built a 6 or 7 figure business and they tell you no, and they're just reading out of a textbook, why am I paying you $150,000? I'd rather pay 5 or 10 grand to, Bill Gates or Tony Robbins or, Gary Vee or somebody that's going to be able to teach me how they did it. Like how I specifically built a 6, 7, and then an 8-figure business and what you need to do from the ground up to get there. Who do you surround yourself with? What do you do? What skills do you need to learn? Like that stuff is not talked about. Managing money, making money work for you. Like and I hate to say it, bro, my outlook on college is it's literally a massive scam. They put you in debt. They force your credit score to go down. So you have to take out loans for houses and cars. And the next thing you know, you're paying off those loans your whole life. Before you know it, you're 65 years old and you're not able to travel. And like that, it wasn't the life for me. It wasn't my mindset on things. And I'm not saying don't go to college, because obviously if you're going to be a scientist, a doctor, a lawyer, like there's some professions where you need to be in school. But for my personal experience, I felt that I was wasting way too much money on college for that. So I decided to invest that extra money into self-education. So to circle back, it all comes back to your environment. That's definitely 50% of it. And the other 50% of it is, what do you know and what are you learning? And if you can combine those two together and you self-educate and you're starting yourself with the right people, you're on the road to success.
No, that is huge. I loved all that. And with what you're learning too, I know that you've helped a lot of people scale 6 and past 7 figures in their e-com businesses. So I'd love for you just to share kind of some of the strategies for how you did that and, how you're continuing to do that with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think the number one thing comes down to, like, we help them set up the foundation. So a lot of these businesses, they know what e-commerce is. They know how to set up a website. They know, ads and marketing, and they know that, like, the maybe even the proper steps to go about it. The number one thing that I see messing people up is they don't have a solid foundation, and they're like getting too emotionally tied to a product. So we take our students through a very rinse and repeat strategy. We used to have a course that you could just buy a one-time payment, but it doesn't work for people. I don't like just giving people a course. I want to, give personalized mentorship to each and every person that I work with. So what happens is when somebody works with me one-on-one, they get access to our course for completely free. And then they watch through the course, and then we actually implement all of those different steps week by week. So we take them through a very rinse and repeat strategy. Week 1 is all about building out their back end, making sure that everything from app integrations to website design is perfect. And then we also set them up with a winning product that we've helped and tested ourselves that we know is going to be successful. And then once we build out that website super professionally, put all the app integrations in, did the email marketing, we have all of the back end ready to go. Then we move into like actually getting a professional ad creative design. So we have actually partnered up with a company that designs creatives for e-commerce businesses for a living. They make some of the best advertisements out there. Every ad you've probably seen on social, I bet you 70% comes from them. They're a massive company. So we set you up with an actual creative from one of the best companies out there, with multiple different creatives for that matter, so we can split test. And then we hop into Facebook, and we have a very rinse and repeat strategy that we give our clients, exactly step by step. And we tell them, hey, do this. And then, let it run for 3 days. And, if the CPM is this high, if the cost per purchase is this high, kill it. And, if you get a result within this demographic, raise the percentage 25%, raise the ad spend 25% a day. Like, we get super, super down and dirty with like the detail of like what we coach our clients through. And I think because of how meticulous that we get in our exact, like literally to like the T, our strategy is just so universal that we've been able to generate crazy good results for most of the clients that we work with, as long as they're willing to actually put in the work. The number one problem is people will invest and then they don't actually stick it through. So like, if you're going to invest, like, we'll get you to a point of results, but you have to stay consistent and like, do what we say.
Yeah, totally. And for those of you listening who maybe haven't purchased a course or whatnot before, what Joe just described is a lot more in depth than a lot of the courses out there. Like, I've paid for multiple courses and none of them go that in depth. So that's definitely
that's the problem.
Value.
They go over, I appreciate that, but thank you. It usually goes over like, the website design, how to find a winning product, how to run your first few ad sets, what to look for. And like, some of them don't even really have all that good advice. Like, most of it's like advice that they, like, I hate to say it, but like, I would bet you 90% of the courses out there are literally somebody that watched a YouTube video and then recreated it and then sold it. Like, and it's like they're using somebody else's advice that they don't even know works, and they're selling it to you. And like, you don't know who you're getting it from. So like, I cannot tell you how many people have lost money from courses because they invested into something that they shouldn't have.
That's
so it's
true.
It's like figure out who you're investing with, know that the person that you're speaking with has done it for themselves. And like, not only have they done it for themselves, but have they taught other people and made other people successful as well? And if you can see all of that side of things, hey, there's somebody to work with. But like, my biggest thing is like, I have bought all of my competition's courses, not because I want to learn from them, but because I want to see what's in their programs. And not to toot my own horn, I have more than all of them combined. Like, I have invested into my course every single week since it was designed a year ago. New videos all the time, new lessons all the time. I've updated the Facebook ad section at least 10 or 11 times at this point. It's constantly getting updated with new strategies. That's so like huge. When you buy into a program, you want to make sure that the strategies are universal and that, 6 months down the road, they can still be applicable. So I go back in, and when Facebook changes or the algorithm changes, I go back in and update what am I doing right now in e-commerce that's working? And I give that strategy. So when somebody buys into our program, they get lifetime access, and they never have to worry about not having, tangible advice that's going to work out for them in the future.
Yeah, totally. So everything you just said there for ecom, right? Which is awesome.
Right.
I love it.
Yep.
Kick ass, low overhead. Now, how does that compare to what you do with actual businesses and the strategy that you have approached that? Like when you're running Facebook ads, is it a lot different approach to, Facebook ads if you're running it for like a local gym, clearly that's going to be lead generation compared to, but like, how do those strategies, if you were to buy this course, could you also basically learn how to do it, for
Yes, actually, that's a fantastic question. So I would not. First off, you can do. I'll get into it in a second. You can do social media marketing without any actual skills. But the reason that I was so successful with a marketing agency was because e-commerce taught me every single skill that goes into building a successful business. Everything from website development to sales to copywriting to email marketing to Facebook and Instagram advertising to retargeting to content creation. I mean, you learn so many different valuable skills. And that's my favorite thing about e-commerce. Not the money that you make, but the skill sets that you acquire that are going to be able to take you down the road for the rest of your life. Like, for example, you could be awful at actually running an e-commerce business, but you might actually learn really, really great skills for copywriting. And then you could go out and be an email marketer for other businesses and get paid thousands of dollars a month because you learned one skill set through e-com. So the skills that I learned through e-commerce, I was able to take with me and apply to my family's business. And if I had not learned all of those skill sets, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that. Now, there is a side of social media marketing where you can just be a middleman. So for example, let's say you particularly wanted to start an agency. You could go out to business X, Y, and Z and get them to want to pay you $2,000 a month to manage their social media pages and create their content, okay? And then what you could do is say, okay, well, I got a business that's about to pay me $2,000 a month, except I have absolutely no idea how to create content or schedule it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my good buddy Joe Staiber, and Joe's going to actually create the content and schedule it. I'm going to give him $1,000, and then I'm going to put $1,000 in my pocket for doing literally no work other than communicating who they're working with, connecting Joe with the business, and then getting the work done. So you can still make really, really great passive income with extremely little time invested with a marketing agency. And most people don't realize that it's actually that easy to make a quick, couple $1,000s a month. You could easily scale to a 5-figure a month business, not doing any work and outsourcing it to a third party. There's no excuse as to why you can't. So I think that if you're into a position where, that requires very little overhead too, like less than e-commerce. So like if you are trying to get started with a marketing agency, I do recommend shooting me a DM on Instagram because I'll definitely be able to help you guys out. But like, not only do we help with e-commerce, we also teach people how to start and scale an agency, whether they have a skill set or they don't. And I think that's very, very powerful as well. So like looking back on it, if I had to like choose one or the other, I probably wouldn't change things because of the way it worked out for me. But like, if I were to start again, not knowing what I know now, I would probably do an agency simply because it's less overhead, and I could have taken that money from the agency to invest back into e-commerce and help scale my Facebook ads and learn the other skill sets that I could have then added to my agency, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And it's like, I'm resonating so well with that message because that's literally what happened to me. Was I went into e-commerce first. And I did not, I didn't have the success of hitting 100K in sales, right? That you had in that short amount of time starting out and then even scaling past that. But I got to a point where I was just basically broke and I had a few $100 left over. And I was like, man, I learned these Facebook ads to an extent. Like still, I'm clearly not an expert, but e-commerce has taught me so much. Like I feel like if I had a more unique product and something but with branding behind it, I could really make this work. So I started doing that for businesses. And then, it kind of grew from there into a marketing agency. But it, like you said, it was those skills in e-com that really helped with that. And if I didn't do that first and I just went into the agency and tried to actually do my own fulfillment, like it would have been a disaster. So it's definitely cool that you got that experience first. And what you're saying is totally true. But I'd like you to touch on a little bit about, how you traveled with your first e-commerce brand, because most of the time when you hear about drop shipping, it's, just sitting behind a computer and running everything that way. That's like, what everyone thinks of. But you actually, traveled and created a legitimate brand with that. So I'd like to, for you to touch on some of the stuff you learned about branding and, just doing stuff differently and not just doing such cookie cutter work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what happened for me, bro, is it was just about building a brand. Like nobody builds a brand. They just take a product, they put it on a website and they run ads. And like what was different about what I did was I was sleeping, eating, traveling in the same gear that I was selling, the backpacks, the hammocks, the sleeping bags, the tents, the boots, the like whatever.
Yeah.
I was living the life. Like I was actually documenting that journey. I was blogging my experience with those different, I was blogging my experience with those different things. And like, that was probably the reason that I was able to experience good success, because like people were seeing that I was actually living the life. And like, not just like, you know, making that up and like, you know, just selling a bullshit product. They saw that I was actually out there and the products were working. And I guess the easiest way to say it is like, I created so much content and I put so much value out and created so many blogs about my journeys that I think I drew in an environment around it. And that's what helped build the brand, because there was an environment behind that. And it wasn't just a product. Like I think the number one product, I always tell my students, like there's two types of products. There's a solution, and then there's like the luxury, like brand type of item. So like, for example, if I'm going to buy a t-shirt, I'm not going to buy a t-shirt because it keeps, you know, the cold off of my back. I'm buying a t-shirt because I'm buying into the brand. I buy the Louis Vuitton and the Gucci, not because it's worth $1,000 a shirt, but because I love the brand and I buy into it. Right. Yeah. Like that's a brand item. Like you have to build a brand to be able to make that kind of money. And then there's like the e-commerce side of product, which is like they solve a problem, like a zit remover, or like, you know, a water filtration system, or, you know, a teeth whitening kit. Like those are solving problems, and people are a lot more likely to buy a product like that because it's solving a problem for them. But if you want to build a long-term brand, you have to build an environment. You have to build a community that people want to buy into and they want to be a part of. And that's what Mountaineer Gear was for me. They wanted to be part of that camping and traveling community. And because I built up that audience through my travel, I think that's why I was able to scale to 6 figures so early on. And why I was able to sell it off for a good chunk of change. But that's the difference between, you know, a brand and an actual product. Like the AirPods, that wasn't a brand. That was a product that people were like, I don't want to pay $300 for AirPods, so I'm going to grab these cheap ones for $25 that look super similar. And like that was a solution for them, right? So it's about figuring out whether you're a solution or a brand. And if you're going to be a brand, you have to go all in, because you're not going to build a brand by not taking the steps that I took, which was literally living out of the same shit that I was selling for like 3 months of my life. Yeah,
totally. So that is perfect example of branding from B2C. Now, when we're talking about the marketing agency and branding yourself B2B, right? How do you go about that and really positioning yourself and making yourself known within the other, you know, organizations and businesses in that world?
Yeah, that's a great question, bro. So I think obviously the first one is like having leverage, right? Like you need to be able to show that you can provide results. Secondly is communication. So like the first things first, bro, is I would reach out to hundreds of businesses a week, and 99.99% of them wanted nothing to do with it. And what happens is, you know, as you continue to provide value and give value, they see that you actually know some stuff that they don't. You give them some tips and tricks that they can implement whether they work with you or not. Like, for example, I would break down a Facebook picture of the businesses and they'd be like, I had no idea that I could track people that were coming to my website and run ads. Some people had no idea that was possible. So when they hear about that, they're like, okay, can you tell me a little bit more? You give them a little bit more information about how you can actually do that to help them. And you're like, hey, can we hop on a quick 5 to 10 minute call and talk about it? And then you give them value over the phone. And it might take a few months, but like as you build relationships, people start to trust you. And that's how I started getting my first clients. On top of that, I also had leverage, like I said, because I helped my family's business out. And needless to say, bro, I'm not crediting it to myself by any means, because we have amazing engineers, producers, clients, etc. But my family owned a record label, okay? And it was literally just a studio out of my basement. Like it was part of my house. Like you walk down into my basement and there was a studio down there with clients. And it was just this rinky-dinky studio. It worked pretty well, but it wasn't anything big. And within 3 years, we had a double platinum record with Chris Brown. And we had done features with Wiz Khalifa, Future, some massive names. And I'm not crediting that to myself, but that was definitely part of the branding and pulling in some big clients. And then what happened was somebody heard our song and it blew up, right? So like that to me was like leverage. And I was able to go to other record labels and say, hey, look what I did. And they were like, yo, like, can we work together? And then I was generating results for other record labels. And I would go to a dentistry. Actually, my first client was a financial advisor. And I said, look, I've only been working with record labels. I've been able to pull in leads through social media. I've generated 2 6-figure businesses through e-commerce. Like, do you mind if I come run ads for you? I gave him a discount on the first month. You know, instead of charging $1,500 to do the work plus $1,000 for marketing, I was like, hey, give me $1,500. I'll spend $750 of that on ads, and I'll keep the other $750 for myself. It worked out. And then, bro, like from there on out, you just have leverage. You go to these businesses and say, look, this is what I did. This is what I can do for you. And if they're interested, great. And if they're not, you move on to the next person. I think it's like people get kind of overwhelmed and they think too much about it. Like 99 businesses out of 100 are going to tell you to go fuck yourself. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But you find the one that's interested, you build the relationship, and 3 weeks down the road, they pay you a lot of money. And the second half of things for me was I built brand, right? So like I went and I spoke at events. Like I've paid money to go travel on my own and speak at events. Sometimes they fly you out, sometimes they pay for your travel. But if they don't, it's not the end of the world for me, at least in the beginning, because I know that I'm going to be meeting people at these events that need my help and that will pay me. So like I'm building relationships there. I'm getting content. I'm putting out on social media that I know what I'm talking about and giving advice. And people see that and they gravitate towards you. And they want to know how you can help them as well. And then the second you offer them a solution to their problem, it's a done deal.
Yeah, totally. No, and that's awesome. I want to touch on a few things you put in there. One of them that really stood out to me is when you're talking about, helping a business and like your family's, studio.
Yep.
And you guys had Chris Brown get on there. But my point is, from going from the basement to that point of having Chris Brown come on, clearly you're going to have artists. But the thing is, I'm wondering, how did you get that big of a domino to fall? You know what I mean? Because after you get like one really big testimonial.
That was luck, bro. I wouldn't say it was luck, but it wasn't like, it's not like we reached out to Chris Brown and he answered us. You know what I mean? Like what happened was to my knowledge, what happened is somebody heard our song that we wrote. Like one of our producers and engineers wrote a song like for himself. And because we were growing the brand on social, I guess one of his team, one of the guys on his team or his crew heard the song and played it for him or something. And it was right when Chris Brown was making his album Heartbreak on a Full Moon, which was like an album with like 35 songs or 40 songs or something, like an insane amount of songs. And I guess they played it for Chris, and Chris was like, I want that song. And they flew out our engineer and producer out to LA to meet up with him. And then we basically just sold the rights to the song to him. So like, it was kind of it was kind of like more of a coincidence than anything else. But that wouldn't have happened if we weren't building brand and like expanding our reach so that somebody could have been in a position to where they would hear us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally get that. So when you're, selling, your SMMA agency, to a normal client, your way of outreach, from what I understood, you said, you try to provide value, but I also got the vibe, it's a numbers game. Clearly sales is a numbers game. So how can you consistently provide value and get those numbers out in a way where it's still time efficient?
So CRMs, we've automated everything. So like email marketing campaigns, like we get somebody to so it's a funnel, bro. Step one is provide value. So here's a blog post about how the top 10 ways for a business to generate leads. They read through it. At the end, it's like, hey, here's our Facebook ad strategy for testing a product. They click that. They give us their email for it. Now they're in our email list, and now we're providing free value to them via email over the next 3 weeks. And somewhere down the line, they're like, oh shit, this value is really great. I'm going to click on this link and schedule a call with them, and then boom, relationship built. That's one way. Another way is, I go to an event, somebody sees me, they want to speak with me, boom, connection. Like it comes in from a variety of different ways. But it's about just providing value, and like value is easy to scale because I can put out value on social media where everybody can receive it. And like I automate that kind of thing. So it's just about like building out a system and a team to like kind of follow up. So like, for example, I have an SOP built out. So like when a client comes into our pipeline, I have employees that are basically paid anywhere from like $3 to $5 an hour to send out scripted stuff that's already been built out previously to these clients, depending on where they're at in the process. Like, do they know who we are? Okay, they know who we are. Oh, send them this video. Okay, they know who we are, and they came to our website, but they didn't purchase. Okay, send them this video. And like, we have different levels to the process, and it's kind of hard to explain within like a short period of time. But the best way to explain it is we've built out systems and scripts that we know work, and then I've just given them to employees to spend that extra time to create those relationships that I no longer have time to do.
Yeah, totally. So when you were just starting out, getting, I know you talked a little bit about how you split the 1,500 down to 750, and what you're doing to get some of your first clients. But once you got a few of those under your belt and you were like, okay, it's time for me to scale up, was the first thing you did look to, scale your fulfillment, scale your sales team, or do both at the same time? How did you kind of build your agency for that?
That's a great question. I think the number one thing for me was I built so I had scaled too far. I took on too many clients at one point, and I realized that and I had to kind of scale back down. And that was because I was like, if anybody was willing to pay me, I took their money. I was like, I know I can provide results. But the problem was I had too many different clients and too many different niches doing too many different things and didn't have enough time. So I was like, I'm going to scale down to like a few different specific niches, a few different specific packages, and then build out a system so that when a client comes in, it's immediately pushed out to somebody else. They get the value, they get the results, so they're happy. But now I'm not spending 12 hours a day on each client. You know what I mean? So like that was how I was able to scale. I had to fuck up before I kind of had to like move back. So I was like, okay, I have too many clients. I'm going to scale back, cut my clients down, take a big hit on the amount of money that I'm pulling in. But then I'm also going to build out a system, hire a team, and create an outsourcing process where when somebody comes in, hires us, we build out the strategy, and then we put it to somebody else to actually spend the time doing it. And that's how we were able to scale up to like that point in time.
Yeah, totally. So do you utilize VAs to, help with a lot of, guess some of the digital work? So like, what are some of the tasks that they have? Cause I know you said that thing earlier with sending videos, but like for actual fulfillment, do you have any VAs, helping you out with that?
So like, here's my look on it, right? Nobody, I mean, at least I'm not gonna be cocky, but nobody that I have found yet that's willing to work for the price points that I would be paying them can do ads better than me, right? And like, when it comes down to that, I don't want my clients to get bad, results or not be profitable. So what we do is I build out the process, I build out the system, I build out the actual ads itself. And then once I've built out the process, I hire a VA to manage it. So like, hey, look for these metrics. If the metrics are like this, kill it. If the metrics are like this, scale it. And that they can do that very easily because I've given them the strategy. But no, I don't outsource the actual skills itself, because what makes my business is that the fact that I'm the one giving the value and providing the insight. And then the things that are like time consuming that I can outsource, that's what we pay the VAs for. Anything from lead generation to managing the ads, it's what they've been built out. That's what we're paying the VAs for. But anything that's like actually skill intensive, I don't trust anybody but myself.
Totally. And how do you go about finding those quality VAs that, you trust that much to, maintain these relationships with your clients and notify you if something is going wrong? It's
trial and error. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of hard to explain, but I think the number one thing is like we go on Upwork or Fiverr, we find somebody that has that skill set. And after we find somebody that has that skill set, we hire them. It costs a couple dollars an hour. And what we do is we give them a test, right? So like, I want to test out their skills and see if they know what they're doing. So, we'll pay them for 3 or 4 days, see how the results come out. And if they're great, continue to work with them. And if not, we go back on Upwork and find somebody else that has the same skill set and pay them the $5 an hour. And you're going to go through 5, 6, maybe even 10 VAs before you find somebody that can actually do the work. But once you find that relationship, they're most of the time living in a third world country. They don't make good money. And if you're giving them solid cash flow and they're doing their job correctly, and then you give them an extra $1 or $2 an hour to like show them that you care about them, they will literally work their ass off for you. And like, they will give you everything they've got. And like, when you can find somebody like that, bro, it's kind of hard not to scale a business, because why would I pay an employee $20 an hour to do the same job when I can find somebody overseas to, not pay them by the hour, but pay them by the job, and they do an amazing job and work 10 times harder? Because to them, it's a 6-figure a year job of what the equivalent of what you'd have in the US. So like, it works out perfectly. They're happy, you're happy, your clients are happy, and it's much easier to scale that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great example of working smarter instead of, working harder, or even just being dumb and spending more money for the same results than you would in the US. So I love that. But one thing I know a lot of agency owners have problems with is actually knowing how to price their services, especially if they're starting out. So how do you, price your services if you're going to be, running, let's say, media buying, for example, so Facebook ads for a company? A lot of people, they don't know, like, if they're running $1,000 a month in ad spend, should they charge $1,000? Like, is there a ratio that you use?
Yeah. Great question. So, first things first is I don't run ads for a business unless I know that I'm going to have them as a client for like 6 or 12 months, because if their budget's so little that they can't afford to pay me what I'm trying to be paid, every month, I'm going to realize that, hey, they're not going to have enough money to move forward. So the biggest thing for me is saying, hey, my bare minimum is $1K a month.
Yeah.
So like, I don't go anything less than $1K a month. And then for every $5K in ad spend, so like $1,000 a month will cover me running your ads for, so $1K a month will cover me running your ads up to $5K. And then like, if you're like, hey, I want to run, $6K or $5,100, I'm going to charge you $2K. So for every $5,000 ad spend, I increment $1,000, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
So that's kind of how I price my stuff. Nothing below $1,000 is worth my time. And I'm even going to be raising the prices from 1,000 to 2,000 soon because it's just not worth my time. So that's how we price it. And then it's all increment based, because like what we have figured out is like, and then it goes back to one other thing, another touching point. So like if you pay me $1,000 a month, you also have to invest $1,000 into ads. If you're not investing at least the same amount of money that I'm putting into ads, into your ad spend, I'm not going to generate a profit for you. And then you're not going to pay me every month.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I want you to pay me every single month. So if you can't afford an ad budget that's going to match the budget that you're paying me, well, then I'm not going to work with you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so I'm assuming a lot of these clients you're not going to actually physically like meet up with in person, right? So say, if you're branding yourself correctly, if you have a client, somewhere, I don't know, in Colorado that wants to work with you, right?
Right.
How do you go about, getting that e-contract with that client? Like, what do you do? I guess not giving legal advice, for legal purposes, but what do you kind of do to solidify that relationship and make sure that, both people understand what the expectations are moving forward?
Well, I mean, I think I set the expectations before we even agree to work together. That's the number one thing. It's all about setting expectations. Otherwise, you're going to get chargebacks and unhappy customers. They know exactly what they're getting before we even agree to work to move forward. But then obviously contracts, we have contracts in place for every single client. And, once we agree upon it, it says you're paying Staiber Consulting X, Y, and Z amount with the agreement that you're not going to charge back for a refund for any reason unless you can prove that Staiber Consulting did not do the job that they were paid to do. Staiber Consulting is not held liable to produce any results for you. If they do, great. If they don't, it's not their problem, because the market decides what works and what doesn't. And, after that, then it lists all the different things that my business is going to provide to them in exchange for that payment. And, talks about, we're going to spend X, Y, and Z amount in Facebook. We'll provide a screenshot of the results in the app that's being provided. So you can see what we actually did spend the money inside the ads manager. We'll give you results, weekly calls, X, Y, and Z. And then if I don't provide on that end, they can charge back. So like, they're protected, I'm protected, and we're both happy.
Yeah, totally. So now pivoting a little bit away from the agency to what you touched on earlier with public speaking, and I guess still touching on agency here, are the systems you set up in your agency, are those really what allows you to do that kind of stuff and, build your
speaking?
brand? And since you have systems set up and you don't have to necessarily work in the business every single day.
Oh yeah, good question. I do have to work in the business every single day, so no, it doesn't. When I'm at an event, bro, like I'll walk away every fucking 25 minutes to take a phone call or respond to somebody or put out a fire or talk to the client. Like, I'm always actively involved. So I figured that it's about what's important, bro. It's not about what I have time for. So the systems don't really. I mean, I guess they do help in a sense, because we do have clients. I closed a $2,000 deal while I was on stage because I had a client that was like answering a phone call and taking a payment. And like it does work that way, but like, at the end of the day, I'm still actively involved all the time, and it never stops. For me, it's just, I realize the importance of speaking on stage for the brand and for the client aspect, and for the long term, like the longevity of like who Staiber Consulting and Joe Staiber is, and that's kind of why I take priority into that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. So another question I like to ask and kind of learn more about whenever I have someone on is if they have any habits that, aren't like a typical, like, I wake up early or whatever it is, but something like if it's meditation, like self-hypnosis, if it's something that's kind of strange or you think that most people don't do it, would you say that there are any unique habits to the life of Joe Staiber, or would you say that you just grind and that's it? Yeah,
I don't really have. I'm a normal kid. I have self-doubts. I have jealousies. I have problems. I'm not some perfect kid. I don't really have. I like to meditate. I like to take time for myself. I don't even say it's meditating. I like to like kind of at the end of the day, like I'll just kind of sit by myself, like with no sound. I'll just kind of think for a little bit. I don't like focus on breathing or anything like that, like actual meditation and that shit. But I know people that do, and they absolutely love it. One of my favorite things to do though is there's this app called sorry, let me just pull it up. It's either Brain Time or Brain Hack. Can't remember.
Yeah.
Where's it at? Brain.fm, and it's like this little it plays music. It's like doesn't have lyrics in it, but it just helps you focus and kind of like get your mind like out there and like thinking on its own. I like to use that sometimes, but no. The only thing that I do is in the morning is I wake up, take the dog for a walk, take a shower, and then usually kind of don't look at my phone for the first little bit to kind of get my brain in the right spot. Other than that, I don't really do anything.
Yeah, totally. So what are some valuable skills that you see, that you think that young people should build looking forward to the future, and where the world is actually, moving?
Communication and sales. Number two things. You can communicate with people. you can communicate with people, you can do anything. And if you have sales, you can do anything. Doesn't matter what you sell. As long as you know how to learn to listen, handle, figure out what the problem is, and then offer a solution and communicate with people effectively and learn to listen, you could do anything in the world.
Love that. No, that's huge. Okay. And we're starting to get towards the end of the podcast here. And I got two questions I like to ask my guests. So you feeling ready for those?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get it. So what is some advice you hear very often, but you personally think is bad advice? You disagree with it. It just kind of makes you cringe.
Ask that one more time. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. So advice you hear really often, like, for example, you could say, if your parents are like, oh, study hard and go to school, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Just advice you hear often, or you hear throughout, other entrepreneurs saying it that you personally disagree with and you think is bad advice.
Wow, that's a great question. I've never been asked that before.
Thank you.
Oh God. I don't know, man. There's so many, but like I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. I think the number one thing is like again, it comes back to like, I don't mean any disrespect because I know you go and I do respect that. But I think the number one thing is like that people are told they have to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the number one, like society literally breeds us from kindergarten to believe that we have to go to college. Otherwise we will be a complete and utter failure and work at McDonald's. Like that's actually what people think. So true. Yeah. So like if we could figure out a way to like fucking not be telling people that bullshit and like, I think the world would be a lot better of a place.
No, I'm 100% with you. And here's the thing too, for me, right? This is my first semester. And I was like, I always heard people like different entrepreneurs being like, yeah, college sucks. Other entrepreneurs would be like, and even entrepreneurs I've had on the show were like, college actually really benefited me. So I'm like, I'm going to make up my mind for myself.
Well, how far in are you? What year are you in?
I'm a freshman, right? So I'm in my first semester. And I'm not going to lie, Joe, a lot of the stuff that you said, I've agreed with very much. And I'm very strongly considering dropping out and focusing on business full time.
Well, all I'll say is this, bro. Any reason to drop out other than having massive success is fucking stupid. Okay. Yes. There's no reason. You have plenty enough time to make a successful business from your bedroom at college. So until you build something, don't drop out. Mm-hmm. But if you're building something and you have something going for yourself and that's going to be your life and you fall in love with it and it's working out, bro, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I did. I didn't just drop out because I thought it was a good idea because Gary Vee was talking about it. I was like, fuck, I have a 6-figure fucking drop shipping business.
Yeah.
I'm pursuing this shit.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And to me, like one of the biggest, I guess, roadblocks, if you would say, is just like the parents and then getting past that. Because I'm sure you know how it is with the parents being like, oh my gosh, this is the only path to success. And you're like, hey guys, like I'm doing this and I'm making this much. And this is what I'm really passionate about. So, I mean, for you, you said that you just went to your parents and you had results and that's what really helped move you forward, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think my mom was very unhappy with it. My dad had dropped out of college. So like, he kind of was like, I kind of already saw this coming. So like, he didn't really care too much. He was just like, I want to see results. Like if you're going to do it, like, you better not be smoking weed and hanging out with your friends. You better be working your ass off. So that's what happened. And I don't know. Just kind of
how does your mom feel about it now?
She loves it. I pay most of her bills and I pay a cleaning service to come to her house every week to make sure she doesn't have to clean after work. She's loving it.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. Okay. Love that. Okay. So the last question we got here is, even with all the success, you've had as an entrepreneur up to this point in your life, there's still struggles that, entrepreneurs face every day in their businesses and personal life. But what's the biggest change that you personally want to make in your life to better yourself as a person and then therefore also better yourself, as an entrepreneur?
Great question. I'd like to eradicate alcohol from my life completely and like smoking. If I could eradicate that from my life 100%, I think my life would be a lot better. Second thing, I think I'm already pretty good at my habits. So I'm getting a lot better. I'm only 20 years old. I'm pretty happy from where I'm at compared to where everybody else is at my age. But my habits, like if I could fucking get a little bit better at like waking up in the morning and a little bit better at like waking up in the morning and like kind of just like, having a very set like I'll kind of get lost in my phone. I'm definitely addicted to social media. Like, I mean, I've learned how to make money off of it, but like I'm still on it way too much. So like cut down my social media time, get a little bit better on my habits. But other than that, man, I'm pretty content and happy with where I'm at right now in my life.
Wow, I'm glad to hear that, brother, because, if you don't got happiness, what do you got, right? So
exactly.
I love that. And I thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm sure our listeners got tons of value and they're going to be, following up with you on social. So where is the best place to actually do that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the best place to find me on social would be at Staiber. It's my Instagram and my TikTok and pretty much everything else, just at Staiber, Staiberr. You can email me at joe@staiberconsulting.com. Obviously, my website, staiberconsulting.com. You can get in contact with me a lot of ways, but the best way would definitely be Instagram. I respond to almost all my DMs. And seriously, like if anybody actually got value from this and they're inspired and they want to kind of get involved, please shoot me a DM. Let me know how I impacted you. Or if you guys want to work together, I'd love to help you guys out, whether it's with e-commerce or a social media marketing agency. But Gavin, thank you so much for having me on, man. It was a pleasure. One of my favorite podcasts so far. And looking forward to seeing all the listeners and what they think.
Yeah, it was my pleasure having you on, Joe. And that is a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show and taking one step closer to becoming that future millionaire. All I'm asking from you guys is that you please take the short amount of time to review this episode. And once you do that, take a screenshot, send it to me on my Instagram, which is Gavin Lera with a period in the middle. And I will be sure to repost that in my Instagram story, give you guys a shout out. Or if you post something about the podcast in your Instagram story, I will be sure to repost that, and there's a little something extra to that I think you guys will like that will be attached to my response to you in the DMs. So look forward to that. All you have to do if you're on iTunes podcast app is you just have to pull up the current episode you're listening to. You hit the purple Future Millionaires underneath the title of that episode. You scroll all the way down to the bottom past all the other episodes. Then you hit write a review, which is underneath, the 5 stars, the visual 5 stars, and you give it a title, a quick description, however amount of stars you think it's worth. Of course, I preferably would love 5. And then you hit send, and all you have to do after that is just know that I am very thankful, guys. I really believe that this is a very powerful education tool for your growth, and I want you to succeed. So please also reach out to me on Instagram, which is Gavin.Lera, and I will be sure to answer any questions that you may have, or any ideas you want to bounce off me. I love to hear them. I love entrepreneurship, helping other people. So let's all succeed together, and you have an amazing day.